Welcome to Corwin's Teacher to Teacher podcast with host Carol Pelletier Radford. Carol is an experienced classroom teacher, university educator, founder of mentoringandaction.com, and author of 4 best-selling professional books for teachers. She believes the best form of professional learning happens when teachers engage in authentic conversations and share their wisdom. In every episode, Carol and her guests share stories about pivotal moments in their careers, successful classroom strategies, and personal actions they take to minimize stress and stay healthy. The Teacher to Teacher podcast is a place to engage in authentic conversation and reflection with experienced educators. We hope these conversations will energize you, keep you inspired, and remind you why you chose to become a teacher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of the Teacher to Teacher podcast. I am your host, Carol Pelletier Radford, and I am so happy to be part of a conversation with 2 very experienced educators and leaders. The theme for Season 3 is based on the book I wrote titled Teaching with Light, 10 Lessons for Finding Wisdom, Balance, and Inspiration. Each of the 10 episodes for this season mirror the 10 lessons in the book. And today's episode is titled Dream Out Loud. It's one of my favorite lessons from all time. It's lesson 9 and episode 9. And I'm going to do something a little different in this episode. I'm actually going to read the bios of my 2 guests so that you can get a sense of the powerful leadership and wisdom that we're going to be talking about in this podcast. So let me introduce Cathleen Beachboard first. She is an award-winning educator, author, speaker, and researcher, specializing in the science of psychological hope. As a current classroom teacher and best-selling author of The School of Hope, she is dedicated to transforming education by equipping schools with the tools to foster resilience, well-being, and achievement. Cathleen has been teaching for 17 years and is currently working on a doctorate in psychology with a specialization in hope. Wow, welcome, Kathleen. I'm very excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here. I love Teaching with Light. I actually have read it, and it's amazing. Just throwing some awesome.
Yay! Thank you so much. And your partner in the Teacher to Teacher podcast, it's like the dating game. We match everybody up, is Rick Rogers. And Rick is a lifelong educator who served as a principal for 29 years in both suburban and urban settings. He is currently the program coordinator and a facilitator for a program called The Soul of Leadership, inspired by Parker Palmer, who also wrote the endorsement for Teaching with Light. It's a personal and leadership renewal program for school leaders. He is also an adjunct instructor in the Salem State University Ed Leadership Program, and he cares deeply about creating culturally responsive and inclusive school communities and cultivating a culture of reflective practice. Rick, I'm so excited you're here. How are you?
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to hear Kathleen talking about hope as such an important part of our work.
Yeah, so it kind of gives me goosebumps, really, that you 2 guests came together. So the purpose of Teacher to Teacher is to provide teachers with wisdom and conversations where they can listen in, if you will, to a conversation that the 3 of us are going to have about topics like this. And hope is a really important one for teachers who have been very discouraged in the past few years. And then we'll give some practical strategies and some tips and really some takeaways at the end. So I'd like each of you to just kind of say a little bit about this current position that you're in, what you're teaching, maybe a little, Kathleen, about why you got into teaching and what you're doing right now in your own voice. Welcome.
Well, thanks. I'm so excited to be here, as I said. So I got into teaching actually because I had a teacher tell me I would never be able to read a stop sign. So I have dyslexia. And growing up, I had such a bad experience with teachers. I said, I'm not going to do that. I am going to be the opposite of that and be there and be the person that I didn't have. And so I got into teaching to be that person. And where I am right now is I am a current classroom teacher because we need teachers. And I wasn't just going to leave and go on my hope train. I'm still in the classroom. I'm teaching in a collaborative environment. So I'm teaching a lot of special education students and general ed students. And I'm also teaching in a self-contained environment. And I'm teaching English. It's amazing. High school, 11th grade. Woo!
I love it. I love it. And you wrote a book too. So we'll talk a little bit more about that because I think our listeners are going to find this, your work is very important. And I read that you're in your doctorate in psychology with a specialization in hope. That is so what is that? What is a doctorate with a specialization in hope? What does that mean?
Well, it means I'm concentrating on positive psychology. We think of psychology as like, hey, take care of the problem I already have. We're trying to prevent the problem in the first place. And
yes.
Woo, be proactive. So
okay, say more. So
essentially, I am getting a doctorate in positive psychology with an emphasis on hope. And we call ourselves hopeologists. So I am a hopeologist concentrating on measuring and raising hope levels in people so that they can access their best life.
Oh my God, I want this. So I am in a group that I joined during COVID. I'm a yoga teacher. Well, I completed yoga teacher training and I was taking online yoga classes. And my teacher from Atlanta, Georgia, one day said something like, hey, is anybody out there that has connection to higher ed? Because I have a nonprofit and I'm in this pause ed group. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So we connected and I joined this group called the Positive Education Consortium. We made it up. We presented in Vancouver last year. And I learned what you're talking about, which I hadn't really understood. So Marty Seligman's work, I'm sure so he's in our group, Marty Seligman. And there's a whole group of people at the University, Penn, that has the special group.
Psychology program, yep.
Yes. So is that where you are? Is that where you're studying? Where are you studying?
There's actually Hope Labs across the country now, but he's got his own positive group over.
Yes, I love him. So I learned about PERMA.
Yep.
And what PERMA stands for, and that must fit in. So we'll talk more about that, Kathleen, or I might call you Hope, but you're Kathleen. Yay. So, Rick.
So it took me a while. It wasn't until college that I started thinking about being a teacher. I was sort of your classic overachiever, and had the good fortune to enroll at a small liberal arts college, Swarthmore College, on a scholarship. And without that scholarship, I wouldn't have been able to go there. And I embraced the liberal arts. I majored in French literature. But I also took 2 courses in education taught by Eva Travers, who inspired me to think about education as a way to make a difference in the world. But I had no interest in teaching French. And so in order to become a teacher, I had to get my master's degree. So I enrolled in a specialized program in Massachusetts called the Shady Hill School Teacher Training Course, which is a program that immerses you in a school for a year while you're doing your graduate work. Went on to teach for 8 years. But my Swarthmore professor in my senior year encouraged me to read a book called Run, School, Run by Roland Barthes.
Yes, my mentor.
That book first inspired me to think about being a school leader. And then later on, I had the good fortune to study with him. He's the founder of the Harvard Principal Center, and take his course, Improving Schools from Within. And best preparation I ever had to become a principal. So then, I went on to serve as a principal, and I loved that role. I loved the combination of working with kids and working with adults. I love being able to have long-term relationships with families over, several years. And wanted to, stay at that level, but I changed schools as a way to continue to challenge myself, and went from the suburbs to the city, back to the suburbs, and just took on kind of different challenges. For the past 8 years, I've been I retired, in air quotes, as a principal. And for the past 8 years, I've been working to teach aspiring leaders and to support current leaders, including the program you mentioned called Soul of Leadership, which I can talk more about later.
I love that. So yes, we'll bring that up in some practical ways. And so Roland Barthes was my mentor as well. I was a TA in that course, Improving Schools, and I would go out and have conversations with aspiring school leaders who are doing their practicum in schools.
Mhm.
So wow,
Mhm.
I didn't know we had that connection as well.
Mm.
So both of you are doing groundbreaking work. So Parker Palmer, big influence. All of Roland Barthes' books are still relevant. If you haven't read anything by him, Kathleen, I think you should look him up, because the leadership piece, he always had that piece of hope in the way he wrote and talked about teacher leadership. So this podcast today is about dreaming, and it's called Dream Out Loud. So Kathleen, when you first heard that was the episode title you were speaking to, what did Dream Out Loud mean to you? And then I'll have you kind of share a story with us about that. What does that mean?
Oh, as soon as I heard dream out loud, that's what hope is. Most people have the misconception. We use the word hope like it's wishful thinking. I hope I get this job. I hope I'm okay. But that's not what hope is. Psychological hope, first of all, it's a science. It's measurable. It's malleable within 90 minutes of an intervention. And it's a mix of three things. It's a mix of your goals. That's your what power. Then you have pathways. That's your way power. And then you have your agency, which is your willpower. Goals, pathways, and agency combine together to form psychological hope. So when I heard dream out loud, dreams being spoken out loud become our goals. Our goals become what we work towards, and that is what we achieve. And our hope dictates the type of goals we set, the type of dreams we set, and if we believe we can do it. That's why hopeful people achieve more and become more, is because they're dreaming out loud every day.
Wow. All right, Rick, what do you think of that? I've never heard it said that way. I wrote the book and put it in as lesson 9, and I love what you just said. I want to take that and put it back in now. Rick, what did
I was taking notes while Kathleen
I know, I was
because
too. I was like,
like
oh,
her
it's this and
definition
that.
of hope, and then it's not wishful thinking. And
Yeah.
we do a pre and a post survey for the school leaders who participate in our Soul of Leadership program, and one of the scales we use looks at what's called psychological capital, and we're looking to have leaders improve their psychological capital. And one of the components of psychological capital is hope. And our program has been shown to have a statistically significant impact on, principals' ability to feel hope. I thought specifically about how we use poetry in Soul of Leadership as a way to promote reflection and to build hope. A wonderful piece that happened a couple of years ago, written by Sarah Pazur, who says that poetry awakens in us to reflectiveness and can provide the vision we need to make the leap between our present state and what feels impossible. I love that quote. And, using a poem is what Parker Palmer would call using a third thing, as a way of sort of putting something, a shared experience that people can have together, and that enables them to reflect and to connect.
Thanks for saying that. In the Teaching with Light book, when I was writing this chapter about dream out loud and writing some affirmations or phrases, I wrote, I create my reality through my dreams. And sometimes I would write in a journal and map out what my dream was for supporting teachers. And this particular chapter was my dream of supporting teachers. Now, it's so interesting that I'm leading this podcast. If you had asked me years ago, you're going to be a podcast host and you're going to bring practical ideas to teachers with experts in the field, I would have laughed at you. And yet, when I look back at the chapter and read, generally, Kathleen, what you're saying about hope is that was my story. I just was always trying to support teachers. And the way in which I was going to do it, I guess what I'm trying to get at with you, it might not be for our listeners specifically the way you think you're going to do it. But generally, it was, I want to support teachers, and it's changed over the last 10 years. How does that fit with you, Kathleen?
So it does change because our goals change as we,
Right.
get older and we change perspectives, but the heart of your goal, who you want to be. And that's why it's really important that we get away from what does a kid want to be to who do you want to be? That's like GPS. So hope is your GPS. You set who that person is. But if a person has no hope and they're not setting that, they will go somewhere. It's like turning a GPS on. It'll still track you, but you won't end up in the destination area that you wanted to be at. That's why hopeful people are more successful, because we have a destination and we want to live our purpose every day.
And so, it's values based. I think I heard you say that it's more values, or maybe Rick said it, like coming from the value, and then the actualization might look different over time. Like I'm doing I wouldn't have thought of that 10 years ago to do a podcast, but I was in schools helping teachers maybe develop their own PD with their unique strengths. So what I'm hearing you both say is that it might look different, but you're trying to find the inspiration, or what do you think, Rick?
So I love what Kathleen said about it's not what are you going to be, it's who you're going to be. And Parker Palmer says we teach who we are, and we lead who we are. And that's actually the opening sentence in our flyer for Soul of Leadership. We lead who we are. So it's building awareness of who we are as people and how we bring that into our work with schools.
I want to underscore something else that one of you said is it's saying it out loud. I think you said, I think a lot of people are dreamers, but I'll talk to teachers and I'll just say, so what do you wish the school would be like? You're complaining about the principal, you're complaining about the other teachers. So what's your dream? I don't want to say it out loud, or I think it's important to say it out loud. So how does that fit with psychology with you, Kathleen? Is there something about saying it out loud as opposed to just writing it on paper and keeping it private?
A lot of people, when we're younger, we're more hopeful. And we know this according to research. And the reason why is we got our whole life ahead of us. And so we set goals for, I'm going to get this job. And then after you get the job, most people say, what's next? Retirement. Okay, retirement. Then that's it. That's a whole life. No, it's what happens in between. So when we say and we look at that, we talk about people becoming things. Well, you have to be hopeful to set those dreams and to speak them, because you have to believe it could happen. A lot of people say, well, I'm not going to say it. Why aren't you going to say it? They don't believe any change will happen. But you have to remember, you do control you, and you can be the change. I hate to say it. I know it's cliche and it's an overused quote, but it's true. You are a change agent. You do one thing, it will have a ripple effect. So they're afraid to say it because they're hopeless. And we know hope is correlated with the type of goals you set. So if you are low in hope, you'll set easier goals. You won't even set goals because you believe you can't do it. And so we've got to make people more hopeful, so they'll speak those dreams out loud.
And that's dream out loud. And that leads to actions that take place. Do you have that same take on it, Rick? Or
so I want to come back to what you said about saying it, if that's all right.
Yes.
I love the work of Judith Warren Little. She's probably best known for her definition of collegiality and what are the components of that. She's not as well known for talking about what is it that will embed change. What are culture embedding strategies, she calls them. So we're thinking about adult culture in a school. And she says you need to first say it. Meaning you need to make that explicit statement for it. You have to model it. So as a leader, especially, or as a teacher with students, they're watching, what we're doing. You need to be modeling it after you say it. You also need to structure for it. There needs to be, a way for people to access what it is that you're trying to work them on. And then finally, you need to protect and reward it, so that, the people who are advancing a change in a school feel supported, and so on. So I love that. Say it, model it, structure for it, protect and reward it.
Nice way. You both saying it in a slightly different way. And her work, Judith Warren Little, was important to the work that I was doing around mentoring. And I remember her, you brought up the word collaboration, both of you in different ways. You can't do it alone, collaborate. You're doing school leaders. She talked about congeniality and collegiality. And that was one thing I really remembered from her research. Do either of you want to take a stab at the difference between them? Because when we're collaborating in schools, I remember this being a really important distinction that I had to share with the teachers so that they'd be brave enough to dream out loud, so they speak their voice, because it might not be the same as somebody else. Rick, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, congeniality is, how we, talk about each other, about our families or our sports teams or the Olympics, or, maybe birthday celebrations or sunshine committees in schools. It's important to have, it's a component of a strong school culture, but it's not sufficient. The way she defines collegiality as talking in increasingly specific and precise ways about teaching practice, and how to do it better. And that's what collegiality is. You got to have a little congeniality to make that happen.
Right.
But too often when we talk about climate and culture in schools, we limit ourselves to that kind of feel good, interpersonal stuff I talked about,
Right.
as opposed to keeping that focus on practice and what are we doing for kids.
And I feel like with teacher leadership, I know you're working with school leaders, but I'm into teacher leaders, what Kathleen's promoting as well. And they have to work with the school leaders. And there's a lot of space for that. Roland Barth's work was a lot about teacher leadership. And I think you need both, because I found some schools got so into the collegiality that it was so stilted that there was never any birthday. It was just like, we got to stay on focus. We got to have achievement. All right, Kathleen, what do you think about all what we're saying?
So I 100% agree with you, Carol. It's the congeniality and the collegiality, they coincide. So Brene Brown, she writes about vulnerability. And so ultimately, the one leads to the other. You have to have that vulnerability. Like I show with my students, the goal I set for myself every year, a personal goal. Why? Because they need to see me do hard things too. Not that I'm the expert in the room. And sometimes like I'll update them on my goal, like working for my next belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They'll say, well, are you there yet? And then I'll tell them I took a belt test and I failed. And they're like, well, are you giving up? No, they need to see that it's And then because of that, it develops a level of trust that I can use to be like, to work with my students. And it's the same thing with my peers, with my fellow teachers. They have to remember we're people too. And then we hear that allows me to say that I am a safe space for them so that we can have that collegiality.
Yes. And that creates the culture of the school, really, is the people knowing each other. And it's not, we're just here to, help our students achieve. We're here to get along with each other too, because we all chose teaching and for different reasons. And we could go on and on. I want each of you, though, I want to transition to a story or a moment, a pivotal moment when you got to this place to focus on this work. So, for you, Rick, to make the decision to be part of this cohort model for school leaders, soul of leadership, it is not the usual leadership prep program. So moment brought you to that, to wanting to be part of that?
Yeah. I mean, I knew when I retired, my air quotes again, for folks can't see that in the podcast, that I wanted to work to support principals. And I was working at the State Principals Association in Massachusetts, and I was approached by Pamela Siegel and Chip Wood, who had created a program called Leading Together, Building Adult Communities in Schools. And they had been working with principals and teacher teams, but they approached me about creating a spin-off of this program, as it were, that would be more of a role-alike experience for principals, because they found that principals weren't being vulnerable, they weren't comfortable being vulnerable in front of their school team, but in a space with other colleagues, they would be. So we launched that. We got some grant funding and kind of went from there. And at the end of the first year, our first cohort said, we want more. And we hadn't thought about that. So we offered a second cohort, and then we started what we call our alumni network. And we provide ongoing kind of opportunities for folks to dip back into the work or recharge.
Right. Talk about a dream. So I call these synchronicities. So part of dreaming out loud is sharing it out loud with your friends. And then you start saying it out loud, and what happened to you, and I write in Teaching with Light, that's what started to happen. As I said it out loud, somebody'd say, hey, do you want to write a book about that? Or do you want to, because people are hearing what your dream is. And I feel like we can't undervalue synchronicities that come up as opportunities. And then it was like, well, let's do more. And then you did more. And then Parker Palmer's involved. And now it's spreading around the country. So what about you? What do you think about what he just said, Kathleen? And then what's your pivotal moment that you wrote that book, or you decided to go on doctorate journey? I don't know.
Well, I didn't start off that way, but Rick, I completely just respect the care that you want to put out for administrators to really take care of them holistically, so that they understand how to model that and take care of their staff. Amazing, everybody.
Yes, I know. It seems like a logical, like every administrator should be going through this type of program.
Yes.
Yes. So what about you? What about your pivotal moment to focus on this?
I was a teacher first, and I actually got a call from social services about a family group of 5 who were essentially being abused, neglected, and their parents went to prison. So to make a long story short, I ended up bringing this family set home, and we were told, hey, just get them to be okay, just get them to function, just get them to survive. And the reality was, I had a problem with that. All of the research and everything that you read about adverse childhood experiences and trauma shows that impacts your brain and it impacts your future. I was not going to let my kids' past steal their future. And so because of that, I started researching, and I said, there has to be something. There has to be something that could put weight on this and fight back. And the reality is there is. And that is what hope is.
Wow.
I got so focused on measuring their hope, raising their hope.
Wow.
And it was strategic.
And this family, it was a family.
Yes. And they're mine now. They're mine. I have 7.
They're your family? You adopted them.
They're mine. Yes.
Oh my God.
But I became so focused on this because I saw the improvements in my own kids. I saw them because hope is also correlated with attachment. We want people to attach to others and have one powerful relationship. If they have no hope, they will not attach. So that powerful relationship, it requires hope. It is fueled by it.
And that's a pivotal story. And that is long lasting. It's staying with you. It's living with you.
So all those things that I saw, I went to school and I wanted to become an expert so I could share practical strategies with classroom teachers to do what I did, except for the kids in their classroom.
Yes. So let's talk about that. Let's segue you in, and then we'll have Rick add his practical messages. So what's the takeaway here? Everybody's listening. They're inspired. They're hearing how we're talking about this. You have a book. Tell us the title. What's in the book? Give us a teaser. How can we do what you're doing? You sound hopeful.
Yes, I am. When you're hopeful, I haven't even had coffee today, and I've been yes.
Right.
So hope, and once again, it's the science, and it is important that it is measured. There is a test. There's one, and it's free. You can look this up, take it yourself. The Adult Hope Scale for adults, the Children's Hope Scale for kids who are in school. The Adult Hope Scale is longer. It's super short, but it's important you measure where you're at. If you find out you're high in hope, that's great, because science shows that once you reach high hope, it becomes built in your brain in your medial orbital frontal cortex. So literally, you've rewired your brain to be hopeful. But if you're medium and you're low hope, this is the most amazing thing. It's 100% learned. This is not part of your DNA. So if you find out you're medium hope, you're low in hope, you have to become hopeful educators. And I'll tell you why. You are the lead hope in the room. And people, because hope, essentially being in a room, it's given to each other just because we learn it from our environment. If you're not hopeful, you're teaching the kids not to be hopeful. And it's important that you have high hope to spread it, because we learn it from others. So when you work on your hope and you raise your hope, you're spreading that to your students. That's the easiest way to spread hope. Make yourself hopeful.
And your teachers in the school.
Yes.
So everybody's like, well, why are you so happy? Why is the culture of this school more? This could relate to all the achievement and everything that we're saying. And it just sounds so, I don't know what the word it's not superficial, but like you can't grasp it because hope isn't like a product or so. Is this in your book? So say the title of your book again.
It's The School of Hope, the journey from trauma and anxiety to achievement, happiness, and resilience.
And this is for students. This is for the students.
It's not just for students. So
okay.
It started for teachers to learn how to raise hope for kids.
Okay.
Part of every chapter is called Compassion for Colleagues. It's how to raise hope in a school as a leader or as a teacher leader. And
so this fits with Rick's program. I think this is a required text for the School Soul of Leadership program. So we'll make sure you both connect, because it's the secret sauce that we're not talking about.
No,
we're just jumping into test scores and all this other stuff. And
research shows hope is the most robust predictor of academic achievement above your intelligence, your previous academic attainment. So if it's the number one predictor of academic achievement, why aren't we measuring it?
Well, you're going to be, when you get that doctorate done, we're going to have you all around. It's going to be everywhere. So, all right, Rick. Response, and then kind of share your message for the teachers who are listening on the call. What do you think about what Kathleen's talking about?
Again, I'm busy taking notes and want to be able to read your book and see how to incorporate that work, because I think it's so important. In a school to be able to model good practice there. When I think about, practical things, I'll tell a story from when I was working as a principal, my last school, fourth school. And I always asked the teachers for feedback, and didn't always get like helpful things that were helpful to me. But one year, a teacher said to me, every time we see you in the hallway, you look like you have a purpose and you're going somewhere. And, could you just slow down a little bit more? I thought about it, and it was true. Like, generally I was, I had 700 kids in a K-8 school. I was generally going somewhere for a reason. But it reminded me that I need to slow down. And I happened to read a piece in the Marshall Memo that summer about advice for rookie principals, which was to stroll more. So to slow down, to stroll more and take in what's happening around the school. So I adopted that phrase, and in the start of the new year, shared that with the faculty, that my goal, my hope, was to stroll more this year. And it became kind of a running gag in the school. People would see me in the hallway and say, "Oh, so are you strolling now?"
A strolling, or is this a destination?
But, now fast forward 10 years later, and a major component of the work of Soul of Leadership is helping leaders know how to slow down, to listen mindfully, and to be more fully present. Because if we're not doing that, we're missing a whole lot of things, and we're not building the kind of relationships that we need to have in a school.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I can't believe that we're coming to the end. But I have a few more questions I want to ask just to kind of button this up. And so you're both doing really important work. This conversation is brilliant and heart-centered. How do you stay inspired and motivated and detached from all this important, serious stuff? How do you get away from 7 kids and principals that are struggling? Like, how do you take care of yourself? Kathleen, what do you do?
Well, I find mentors, because we know the power of a mentor, and hope is also contagious. People who are very successful are usually very hopeful. And so I find mentors who are doing amazing things, and essentially I ask them to mentor me. You're never, ever too big or too intelligent to have a mentor. Find a mentor and then use that mentor to improve yourself in your life. I love learning from others. And so it's about constantly finding someone who's doing something amazing and learning from them.
I love that. I'm going to piggyback on that. So I was at this international mentoring conference in North Carolina, and I heard that. I'm a mentor trainer. So I train people to find mentors, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And I was looking around and I was like, oh, I think I need a mentor right now. So I kept looking at, now I'm probably one of the older people in the room. I have a lot of experience, and I'm looking in certain directions for, legacy older mentors. And then all of a sudden in the last session of the conference, this young teacher got up and shared her mentoring vision out loud, right? And I went, she's my mentor. Oh my God. And I went over to her. She was sitting at the table at the last session of the conference. And her name's Emma. I won't say her last name. She's from Pennsylvania. And I just said, would you be my mentor? And she said, yes. So she and I didn't know each other. She's 23 years old. I'm a lot older than that. And she's been mentoring me. So I think what I want to say to the listeners, I was looking in the wrong direction for my mentor. I was looking for someone older than me. Yep. And it's not always about the age. And she has helped me so much because she looks at my website differently, and she asks me questions that someone else would not ask me. So thank you for bringing that up, because hey, I'm shouting out to Emma so that she can listen to the podcast. What else do you do, though? You must do something else.
Yeah, so I also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
What is that? Tell me what that is.
Wrestling sport. Typically, there's not a lot of women in it, but
okay. How'd you get into that then?
Essentially, I had a student who was doing martial arts, and I wanted to do one too, but I wanted to do something that would be really hard. And then the student told me about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, how it's mainly a male-dominated sport, but it's martial arts that developed in Brazil, and it's grappling, and it's hard, and get bruised, and choking, and crazy.
Oh my God. I can't imagine the psychology of hope that fits with this.
But it trains you to realize, even in hard situations, things are not hopeless. There's always a way, but it's important that you keep your focus not on the moment itself, but on where you want to go. And that's me. And it's amazing. It's really hard. And my students constantly are like, did you get your next belt yet? Usually the answer is no, because it's really hard to get a belt. It takes years. But it keeps me grounded, and it allows my students to see me do hard things.
And that you don't always pass, or you fail sometimes, and then you keep going. So that's a huge message for your students. All right, Rick, I don't think you can top that. I can't.
No,
either.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, no.
No. What do you do, though?
Well, Let me just touch on the mentor piece, because I cited a couple mentors for me along the way, in college, and Roland Barthes and Harvard Principal Center. And I mentioned Pamela Siegel, who founded Open Circle.
Yes.
Many listeners would know that program. And Chip Wood, who founded Responsive Classroom. And they were the ones who developed Leading Together and then worked with me to develop Soul of Leadership. And so I feel very fortunate that every step along the way in my career, I've been able to have good mentors, to learn from.
Yeah.
In terms of, inspiration, when I was a principal, I really took inspiration from the students. And I know everybody says that, but I had the opportunity just this week. I was in a meeting with one of our liaison for our grant funding, and we finally made the connection that she had been a student in one of the schools that I led, and remembered some things that I did as a principal. I was so inspired and touched by that, and feel very fortunate to have made those connections.
I think that students, they grow up, and the influence that we have on people, we don't always see, or even the result of this conversation in the podcast, our listeners are probably all jotting things down, and because they all have a different point of reference. So thank you for reminding us as teachers that our sphere of influence is way beyond what we can even imagine. So we're winding down. I have a couple of easy questions for the end. We change over time. We change our thinking. So Kathleen, what did you used to think? This is a Dick Elmore kind of prompt. What did you used to think, and what do you think now?
Because of my own kids and just working with a lot of collaborative students, I used to believe at-risk kids, the goal was just to get them to survive, be at grade level. The expectations weren't there that should be there. Instead of getting them to survive, I now know through psychological hope, every person has the ability not just to survive, but to thrive. And so it's important that we measure and raise hope so every person has the chance and opportunity to thrive.
Thank you so much. All right, Rick, what did you used to think? What do you think now?
I used to think that it was about the individual teacher, and having the instructional skills and the relationship with students that would lead to success. Those are obviously still important, and part of the equation. But now I think that more than ever, collaboration is an essential part of that. The needs that we're seeing in schools now, the mental health needs, the socioeconomic disparities, are just getting stronger, and unfortunately, and it's more than one person can do as a teacher. You've got to work as a team. You've got to be able to work with your department or grade level team, with your special educators, your multilingual teachers, in order to meet the needs today. So I think that emphasis on an ability to collaborate has taken on increased importance.
Right. And it fits with our discussion of collegiality and congeniality and collaboration. Mm-hmm. We've got the 3 C's here. So what's some good news? John Krasinski kind of got this in my head, some good news, and this fits with our topic of hope. So what do you want to celebrate? Kathleen, what do you want to celebrate?
Getting to the almost end of writing my dissertation and my doctorate.
Yay! We're applauding.
Work hard, but man, no.
Oh, it's hard. I remember one of my professors saying, because I would try to make it perfect and rewrite and edit. I learned how to edit. And finally just said, the only good dissertation is a done dissertation. And I remember that forever. So I encourage you, just get it done. It'll be good. You have a lot to share with us. And what about you, Rick? How do you want to celebrate, end this podcast conversation with a celebratory note?
We're launching our 7th cohort of solo leadership. We've worked with over 200 school leaders in the last 6 years, and just so excited to have a whole new group ready to start with us. And we're finding now that 2/3 of our participants are people who are there because a colleague recommended the program to them. So that's, people vote with their feet. So very affirming to be able to do this work to support school leaders who are doing a very difficult job. So
thank you so much, both of you. This has been such an inspiring and an energizing and hopeful conversation. I feel like our schools are in great hands. We've got the school leaders, the students, the teachers all handled. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. I want to remind our listeners to remember to stay inspired, stay healthy, and don't forget to share your good news. And special thanks to both of you. And the next episode is the final episode of season 3. You will not want to miss this conversation. It's called Pay It Forward.
Thanks, everyone, for joining today's Teacher to Teacher conversation. We hope this time together energized you, inspired you, and reminded you why you chose to become a teacher. You can purchase any of Carol's books and any books mentioned in the podcast online at www.corwin.com. Please leave a review and share this podcast with your colleagues. Thank you for listening to the Corwin Teacher to Teacher podcast, a place to share teacher wisdom and engage in authentic conversations with experienced educators.
Come explore Corwin's free New Teacher Toolkit and resources. We've curated these resources based on extensive research from teachers, coaches, and principals alike. Whether you are brand new or a veteran teacher, find ready-to-go teaching tools at corwin.com today.